In this video, I'll demonstrate the core functionality of the Trimble Mobile Imaging Interface, also known as TMI, in interacting with the Trimble MX7 unit. So the very first step once you've powered on your system is to make sure you're connected to the MX7's local network, either via Wi-Fi or Ethernet. You'll need to use the appropriate password tied to your specific MX7 that's typically found on a sticker that's stuck on the power box. Once you've joined that network, you'll punch in this specific IP address as listed in the user manual. Please note it is actually a slightly different address, whether you're connecting over Wi-Fi, as I am in this case, or via Ethernet cable. Refer to the quick start guide or the user manual for those specific addresses. So once you enter the TMI interface, this is what it looks like, kind of a map page. An exciting thing to point out here in November 2022 with a recent TMI update, if I expand this icon here, so mission coverage is of course where you've actually captured data before, and you can delete those and things over time and actually download them as well. But this custom layers, it used to be you had to bring in a background map, like say a route for mission planning, which by the way does have to be a KML file, not KMZ, just KML. But when you hit this plus sign here, you now have a second option. It used to be it had to be placed on a USB thumb drive, which you'd stick into the back of the MX7 power box, which you can still do, but you can also go to this external file upload and just browse for a KML that's on your device and bring it in that way. So really convenient for folks, using your iPad, tablet, computer, whatever it is in the field. No need to transfer that to take another step to a thumb drive. You can just upload directly from that device. And again, that's new with this latest release of TMI here in November 2022. But other than that here, there's not a whole lot to say about this kind of main page. Again, you can manage those things there. And I already mentioned the mission coverage. You can actually download KMZ of individual past mission coverages. Another nice new update with this version of TMI is automatically when you back up the mission data, and we'll show that later on in this video, the KMZ comes out of your entire mission trajectory as well as each run. So, of course, historically, prior to this release, users certainly could have gotten that same information out of, for example, POSPAC, MMS, and other ways, but it's now done automatically for you, which is a really nice feature. Other than that, if you have an external hotspot, let's say from your phone, paired here in TMI, you can actually see this OpenStreetMap background map. If you don't have that external hotspot Wi-Fi connection, it's not going to show up. And then other thing to point out for new TMI users, you do get a disk storage percentage value here, so I can say I'm about 20% full on my 2 terabyte disk. So it's great to have that real-time monitoring every time you power on the system, or as you're backing up data and capturing data during mission, so you don't fill up your drive. And then of course, once you're ready to start a new mission, you hit the plus sign down here, and ready to shut down, hit the power button here in the upper right. But now let's get into the actual settings you can manipulate as a user here in TMI by clicking on the hamburger menu. So working from top to bottom, system info is simply a quick overview of which version of an MX7 you're running, which TMI version you have, and so on and so forth. Back to the hamburger menu under settings. We have a number of options here. I'll kind of hit the highlights and then dive into a couple of more details. So general settings is basically just language. Calibration import would be, and that's really more for an MX9, MX50. I don't actually think you would ever need to do that with an MX7, but it's still here. Wi-Fi settings, I already referenced that before. So this will kick you over into the admin interface in TMI, where you could actually pair, again, say your iPhone, turn on your hotspot there, join that network, which will allow that OpenStreetMap base map to run in the background. So I would simply refresh this and join a network that I see that's visible here to make that connection. Remote support, self-explanatory. You would use this if you contacted Trimble Imaging support, if that was a necessary step to further diagnose your issue. And then system administration, which we just saw a glimpse of with Wi-Fi settings, has some other parameters we'll look at here momentarily. So mission presets is the first one to really dive into a little bit more detail. And so this is important before you begin any mission, whether you're setting it up on a vehicle for the first time or whether you are updating your capture settings. So see a couple different saved vehicles here. I'll go to this Jeep Compass. Once you've selected an option in the drop-down, Click the pencil icon to edit that vehicle. And the key thing, and there's not much else going on for the most part with MX7, is just your installed sensor height. So you measure that to the reference point, which is the rear pin on the quick release plate. So in this case, you can see it's always in meters, my value there on this particular vehicle. If I had DMI, I'd measure the X, Y, and Z offsets to that reference point, wheel diameter, whether it's left or right side of the vehicle, and then GAMs, same thing, X, Y, and Z. If you had, say, a third-party high-resolution camera, you could enable this, input the appropriate settings. That really is, manufacturer/camera or other accessory specific, and also a great thing to talk about with discuss with Trimble imaging support. But in my case here, I've just got a straight-up vehicle, no accessories. All I need is that sensor installation height in meters. Once you're happy with that, you click Save. And of course, if one of these became irrelevant at some point in the future, you could delete it, and of course you can add a new one as well. Sign. Capture settings work very similarly. I'll go ahead and add a new set here with the plus sign. Demo rural, and let's say I'm happy with these user accuracies, which I should point out, by the way, if you tighten these up, meaning to say make the values a lower attitude, smaller heading, 2 for the position instead of 10 meters, whatever. That means your operators in the field will have to actually drive around longer and or do a static session longer to drive down these values. So you'll see this later on when you turn on a mission. But when you first power on the MX7, these values are like off the charts and your navigation solution is in the red, considered degraded. You are not able to, the operator is not able to actually start capturing data. So you can play with these values to dial in for your project accuracy. If it's more, very rough in, strictly mapping grade, which of course the MX7 is all about anyway, you might up those. If you want to get it as absolutely tight as possible, make sure your operators aren't cutting corners or starting to collect too quickly, you could dial these down. So just be aware of that, and you'll see that later on in this video. Another big thing here is, of course, just trigger settings. So you can do it based on distance or based on frames per second. You'll see up to 10 frames per second. But let's just say in my example here, I'm doing a rural highway. Maybe I don't need to have a lot of variation. Maybe I'll space it out every 8 meters even, just because maybe the signs are pretty seldom, not a lot of other assets. So once I'm happy with my settings here, I'll simply save them. And now it's an option here in my drop down. Maybe I'm done with that particular project specific scenario has gone away. Once it's here in the drop down, I can delete it. So that's mission presets. Then the other, whoops, a little bit of a lag on that. Yes, I do. All right, so now for backup mission data, this is a key step after each day of capture. So in my example here, I'm actually plugged into an accessory called the MX7 ground power supply, just an AC plugged into an outlet. Great for doing your data backups in the office. Your field crews, of course, can just plug in an external data drive into the MX7 itself and do that right on the truck. That's fine. If you are doing, hundreds of miles a day, you have to be sitting there for a little bit of time, so great to give them that accessory and help them do this in the office. So if I had another mission already that had not yet been backed up, I would have a red X here. Let's say I want to back up this one again. As soon as I check the box and have an external drive plugged in, I could start the backup. Of course, if nothing's checked, you'll notice it's grayed out. And if I didn't have anything currently plugged in, I'd have a little refresh button here to make sure TMI detected that device, or refresh right here. We also get the same disk storage percentage as we do on the main kind of home screen of TMI. And of course, as you get done with missions, eventually you'll fill it up. You just delete them right here as well. Last thing to kind of dive into real quick is the System Administration tab. We can launch ourselves right back into the home page, TMI. Got this kind of dashboard overview, very similar to the system info we looked at previously. When we need to update the firmware, as TMI does get updates periodically, you simply take that download file from Trimble, put it on a thumb drive, go to this tab. Once you stick that thumb drive into the back of the power box, the MX7 power box, you can find it here. I don't have a thumb drive currently, but I would refresh and update this TMI version as needed. If you should run into issues and need a deeper diagnostic bit of support from Trimble Imaging support, you go to the Log Download tab, and you could download the log file to whatever device. You bring your own device that you're using, and then once you've downloaded it, zip it up, shoot it over to imaging support. They can unpack it, figure out what's going on. Already touched on Wi-Fi before. That's how you connect to an external hotspot, let's say on your phone, to view the OpenStreetMap base map. You can check license information here, as well as update your license in a very similar fashion as you would the firmware, TMI firmware. Same deal. Put that new license file on the thumb drive. Search for it here once you've plugged that thumb drive into the power box. Remote service, again, I've touched on previously. That's self-explanatory. Imaging support will guide you through that. You can export the system info if needed, and then check out the license agreement, the end-user license agreement. That's really it for kind of the key TMI functionality. The last thing I'll do here is start a mission real quick, and it won't be a great demonstration as I am, of course, stationary here in the office, but just to click through what those dialogues look like. So hit the plus sign here in the lower right-hand corner. Call this demo. Give a description if I wanted to. Of course, you have to have the vehicle you want to use already configured in those vehicle presets. If you realize you have yet to do so, you would cancel and go add it. I'll pick my compass, add some notes here if you wanted to, and then pick your capture settings from the options that you've already previously created. And I'll hit next, make sure you're happy with those parameters, and then click start. And then this process doesn't usually take all that long. I'd be interested to see if my sensors are considered degraded here in my indoor environment. Sometimes the pause has a challenge initializing indoors, but we're in business. All right, so again, same TMI we've been looking at throughout the course of this video. Now we can tell through our dashboard and by this red indicator that our navigation solution is degraded. You can see my lovely home office and all the clutter. Again, as previously touched on, you can interact with the mission coverages and bringing in your KML routes for your mission. Collapse that there. If I click on this camera icon here, I can click on each of the 6 lenses to focus on different points, or I should say different one of each of the cameras. If I click on this red arrow here, that's the navigation pane, and we'll see our values again are off the charts. As I mentioned previously, you could punch in higher values for those user accuracy thresholds to allow you to get started sooner. Again, I'm sitting here stationary indoors, but for a production scenario, if you're trying to have your folks just gather as much as possible and minimize their kind of downtime driving around, warming up the IMU, you could certainly adjust these thresholds as needed. Once that solution gets close, this will actually turn orange and you can begin capturing a run. If I tried to do so right here with this play button, it'll reject it and say, hey, your navigation's degraded. You've also got the sky plot to see the satellites in real time. You can leave comments, or I should say your operator can leave comments at any point along the mission. Something to be worth noting there. And then this little gear icon is very powerful. You can actually change your mission settings mid-capture. You can't change the vehicle, obviously, presumably that has not changed, but you can change your capture settings. If you say we're moving from more of a rural, triggering your camera every 10 meters to more of an urban area, triggering every 1 to 3 meters, you can do that on the fly as long as those capture settings are already made available prior to starting your mission. And then once you pick your new option, hit apply right there. And that's really it with TMI. So again, I want to actually hit a run here because it won't let me with my degraded nav, but I will go ahead and shut down this mission. It asks, am I sure? Yep, I'm going to complete the mission. And then once this shuts down, we'll see the backup mission interface one last time for illustration. Alright, let's go back to our hamburger menu in the upper left, go over to settings, backup mission data, and we'll see this new mission here. I do already have my device, my external drive plugged in. Again, if not, I could refresh. This is grayed out until I select something, so I'll select my demo mission. I'll start the backup. You'll see that red minus means it's not been backed up yet previously. Once you do run this backup, it'll turn to a green check mark. We'll get a nice little status bar here while it's doing the transfer. Alright, and that backup finished. You see that went from red minus to green check mark. And go ahead and eject my external data drive. And then once that's done, I can go back and shut down my MX7. It gives you a 60-second countdown. Once it hits 60, your operator can go and press the power button in the MX7 power box to shut down the system. Now that we've successfully backed up our mission data from the MX7, I just want to highlight the data structure here really briefly. So everything you see here, with the exception of this coverage folder, is the standard data structure anyone who's used MX7 before is used to. Got your raw camera files, your PGRs, and everything else. Got your position information here. Got your HTML report about the mission, your calibration JSON, MXDB, the TriDB, of course, that you bring into TBC to stitch the panoramas in a log file. But this new folder here is this coverage folder, and this is, here in November 2022, the new TMI release version 4.0.3, and it's just a KMZ file, for Google Maps, Google Earth, of your mission trajectory and the run trajectories as well. So just a nice, neat little feature that automatically, without any particular opting in or anything from the user, from the operator, this additional folder is now just automatically exported with everything else. So for folks doing a lot of, multi-day, bigger project collects, of course you can export things like this out of POSPAC yourself, but kind of quick and dirty real-time, where did your operators go that day? You've already got that file. And just a real quick look at that here in Google Maps, Google Earth, again, it is separated out by run. So I had just a single run under this larger mission trajectory. So just like you see in TMI, you got a thicker blue line where data was actually captured. So again, a really nice new feature with the latest release here of TMI here in November 2022. Hopefully that provides a lot of convenience to the user base.